with the education system, you'll usually hear a few things like schools are underfunded, teachers are underpaid or burned out, class sizes are too big. And if you ask how to fix education, most people will say, well, we got to spend more money. We got to hire more teachers and counselors now. We got to update the curriculum. And those answers do sound reasonable. However, they are dangerously incomplete. Because what if the real crisis in education isn't money, it's not staffing or just lesson plans? What if it's something far more uncomfortable? Something happening inside classrooms every single day, hidden behind grades, policies, bureaucratic language. Well, today we're going to shatter some assumptions. My guest is Geno Young. He is author of the new book, Sex, Drugs, and Illiteracy, The Death of Education in America. Geno, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you so much, Mr. Hoyt, for having me. It's a pleasure, an absolute honor.
Well, I appreciate the opportunity. This book is it's a raw, unfiltered expose. You say memoir of your time as a substitute teacher inside South suburban Chicago high schools, and what you witnessed wasn't just misbehavior, which we're going to talk about a little bit of that, but it wasn't just kids being kids, and it wasn't isolated. It's a massive failure, if you will.
Oh, yeah.
Protected by policy, incentives, and silence. So to everybody here, if you think you understand what's broken in education, I promise you this conversation's going to challenge that belief. Let's get into it. Geno Young, I'm going to dig into your time as a substitute, but let's fast forward something. Tell me about room 119.
Oh, room 119. Okay, room 119. I say in the book that it's sort of like that room was possessed, like there was a demon or something in that room, because every single time I was assigned that room, there was an issue. Now, I've learned in the time since I worked, and full disclosure, I worked at Hillcrest High School, which is in Country Club Hills, Illinois, which is predominantly the school where most of the stories in my book come from. But this particular room was a Spanish slash language. Oh, there you got it right
There you
there.
go. Yeah.
A, a Spanish and a language room. And the teacher who would frequently miss, she never left any lesson plans. She never left any assignments. It was like she would just abandon you. And one thing that I learned very quickly, and the substitutes sort of spoke on this, when we would be in the teacher's lounge, but one thing that I learned fairly quickly is that when teachers do not leave a lesson plan, it creates chaos. The students they play on that, and they just sort of create a feeding frenzy for the substitute, which they have no respect for. Now, full disclosure, they don't respect the teachers themselves. So a substitute, which is an outside entity entering into the classroom, they have absolutely zero respect for. So when you enter into that situation and there's already no structure and there's already no support from administration, there's already absolutely no accountability and no rules to be had anywhere in the school. You're really just a calf lined up for slaughter, essentially, to use that phrase. But room 119, that's where I had my absolute worst experiences. Some of the experiences I can share here, but particularly one time where I wanted to expel 8 children from the room because they were misbehaving that badly. They were throwing stuff around. They were using inappropriate language. They were playing games. They were playing Minecraft on the computers in the room. They were getting up, walking out. I call it doing the bathroom thing, like a relay to the bathroom. This one wants to go to the bathroom. That one wants to go to the bathroom. Coming in the room, flipping on the lights, turning the lights off. Asking me if they could turn the lights off, and when I said no, the girl's response was, "Who the f does he think he is?" Just all manner of disrespect. But particularly, there was one incident in that room that's actually so graphic. I don't even know if I can share it on this in this space. But if you read my book, you'll know it was a. I'll put it this way: it was a very graphic sex act that occurred in my room, no more than 7 feet away from me, on a day when only 7 kids were even in that classroom, because most of the kids were out on a field trip that day, and the kids were so emboldened and so brazen to perform a sex act in that classroom. And not only did they perform it, but the most disturbing thing is that they live streamed it over the internet, because when I looked, I saw little faces like little Brady Bunch squares, on the laptop screen, as if people were watching in real time, like on a Zoom call, essentially like what we're on right now. So I had the absolute worst experiences in that room. Deans were frequently called to room 119, and in particular, the day when I wanted to expel 8 kids, they came in. The security came in and said, "Well, I can't take 8 kids out of here." I said, "Well, if they're misbehaving, you need to do something because they can't stay in my room." So what they ended up doing was sending down a dean. And I speak to this a lot in my book. I use the term white liberals because that's the issue that was at hand. The school is predominantly Black Hillcrest, but the administration was almost completely
Mhm.
comprised of white liberals who are, as Malcolm X will say, are a stain on the Black community because they purport to be our friends when they're not. They purport to give us um, false help. They think that we have no agency, no way of lifting ourselves up, and that they have to sort of rescue us in a sense, which is very perverse in itself.
Let me jump in. It's not just false hope, but it's
Mhm.
the fact that they are establishing themselves as they are your hope.
Yes, that they're the savior. It's a
Yes.
savior complex, and that
Mhm.
they have to, as I say in the book, they have to come and rescue these little black angels. Is what
Because you
what
can't
what I
do it
heard.
yourself. Because you can't do
Yes.
it yourself, you have to rely
Hmm.
upon them. It's not just a false
Absolutely.
hope, but it's
Hmm.
oh,
Oh yeah. Yeah,
yeah.
it's just the worst. So they ended up sending in a dean, and she just walked around and was sort of smiling with the kids and saying, "Okay, we're gonna do our work now, and it's all over now, and we're all." It was like something off of Sesame Street. She had like this bubbly persona, and she was speaking to them like they were in first grade, and these are 15-year-olds, and they
Mhm.
didn't respond to that. I will say the room quieted down just a little bit, only because they saw an older woman enter into the room, and they sort of, they had no respect for me because I was younger. I am young, and they would often say, "Why does our substitute look like he could be a senior?" So a
Right.
senior in high school. So they just didn't respect me.
So, I'm gonna I mean, your book, reading through that, you don't hold back, and
No.
you use some it's raw. It's a
Oh
raw
yeah.
expose. I mean,
Yes.
there's some language in there, and you talk about that room 119 a couple different times.
Hmm.
And when you were feet away from that live stream and that sex act, I'm shocked by the contact, the content, the act itself. But I'm actually more shocked by the when you try to report it,
Oh yeah.
the reactions by the administrators. Talk about that.
Yes. So when I saw the act occurring in the room, I freaked out because I've been in high school, college. I've seen my share of crazy things happening at schools, but never have I ever seen anything like that happen in a classroom of all places. So when that happened, I mean, I lost it. I freaked. So, and it happened at the end of class, so I couldn't even call down security for them to come in and do anything about it because the bell rang maybe a minute and a half after it happened. So they waited. They knew what they were doing. So I wrote it up, wrote a report up, went down to the dean's office, filed an official report. Then, maybe about 45 minutes later, I was called in by 2 deans and an administrator, and they wanted me to recount my account of what had happened. And I told them point blank. And one of the deans said, and she sort of had like this Lucille Ball look on her face, a persona. "Oh, well, we've never had anything like that happen here before." And there was another dean standing in the room, and he sort of just looked down and as if to say, "Yeah, we have," because the year prior, the kids thought that it was a good idea to shoot an actual sex tape in the basement of the school and try to airdrop it to the entire school. But this particular administrator was able to catch it before it could go out to the entire school. But they did this during the school day, during school hours, like around noon, and wanted to airdrop it by later that afternoon to the whole school. So they knew that these things had happened before. This was not a one-off. Things that happened also at homecoming that I won't get into. That's in the book. But
Mm.
they knew this was an issue at the school, and this is all Hillcrest High School. But it was just that apathy. They didn't care, and they called up the parents, both parents. By the end of the day, they ended up, this was the discipline. I'll get into the discipline. This is what they thought was a good idea. They ended up sending both students home maybe 25 minutes before the school day ended, and then just taking the girl out of the classroom. No one was suspended, no one was expelled. There was no sort of repercussions. No one was sent to an alternative school, nothing like that. They didn't even send any of the kids down to what they call ARC, which is where they I say in the book, where they hide the worst nightmares of the school. Like the kids who shot the sex tape in the school ended up down in ARC. The kids who performed this particular sex act in my classroom, they didn't even send them downstairs to ARC or ARC as they call it. They just released them into the into the school, and it was like it never happened. And since there was no discipline whatsoever, this girl felt emboldened.
Yep.
And about I guess about a month later, I unfortunately had her in another class, and this was at the end of the day, and I came in, and this was in an English class this time, and this particular English teacher, she just she never left any work. She was just the pretty much just the talk of the whole school because of how lenient she was. The kids were reading Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, and they were 14, 15, 16-year olds. So she was giving them coloring books and coloring pages. So this teacher was just nothing. But that's another issue. So I was in her classroom, and this same girl that performed the sex act in my previous classroom a month prior came in, and it was kind of quiet in there. And she just burst in the door and just started screaming at another girl, accosting her, saying, "Are you trying to F my man? Are you trying to F my man?" Just screaming that over and over and over. I said, "Young lady, you cannot use that language in this classroom. You need to take that out because you shouldn't even be in here right now." She completely looked by me, acted like I wasn't even there, ended up accosting the other girl to the point where the girl was so frustrated and frankly embarrassed that she got up and ran out of the classroom. Then that's when the crazy girl followed her out there and proceeded to beat her up in front of the entire hallway. Yes, a hallway full of kids. She beat her up. They were live streaming it, and then she lifted up her shirt and flashed everyone in the hallway. And as if to say, yeah, yeah, this is me, this is what I got, and this is what belongs to the man you're trying to take from me.
Oh man.
So yeah, this is what she did. And then the worst part about that was that I had kids in my room that flew out in the hallway when they heard the commotion, before I could take attendance. So I closed my door and said, look, anyone who flew out in that hallway, you're not getting back into this room. And I proceeded to take attendance and try to establish a modicum of decorum. And the kids, were snickering and laughing and whatnot. And I said, look, I'm taking attendance right now. Do not dare say a name that's not your own, because if you do, you're going to be in a world of trouble. So they didn't do that. So I locked the door, and I just hear this banging on the door, bam, 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 bam. And I knew it was the kids that had flown out into the class, and out into the hallway, maybe about 10 kids trying to get back in. And I was like, no, they're not coming back in. No one, don't you dare touch that door. So this went on for maybe about a minute and a half. Then I hear the door, the key card on the door beep. I
Mm,
hear a beep, beep, beep. And I said, wait a minute, that's the door. And the next thing I know, this cavalcade of kids just comes dancing and yelling and screaming into the room, celebrating because they had made it in. And the whole time I was just perplexed, and I was wondering to myself, how did they get into the classroom?
right.
How, who let them in? So I sat there for the rest of the period. Mind you, now I marked them all absent. They all had a zero for the day. I didn't update the attendance roster because they
Hmm.
were absent. And I sat there just wrecking my brain. How did they get into the room? Did they, do the old credit card trick on the door? But these doors, were locked. The school had spent like some, I don't know, like $100,000 on new locks that year. So I knew they couldn't get in that way. So the day ended, and I was walking through the hallway, and I bumped into another teacher and the substitute coordinator of the school, who was essentially my supervisor. And my brother and I were telling him about the day and how things had happened. And I told him what we saw, and the supervisor was just shaking her head. And then one of the teachers standing next to her said, when I told her, I said, I don't understand how the kids got into that room. She said, oh, I'm right next door to that classroom. I saw the whole thing. And I looked at her, and she said, the dean let him in. And she said his name. She said, Dean so and so let him in. And I just looked at her. And then I looked over at my supervisor, and she was just staring down at the floor, shaking her head as if to say, I'm about to lose all my
Mm,
good substitutes. And I was so upset. Before I said something out of character, I just decided just to leave just to leave the building on that day, because I was just that upset that a dean of the school let those students into my room, knowing what had occurred, knowing that they were out there filming this girl get beat up and this girl flash in the whole class. I mean, the whole hallway. And it was an administrator at the end of the day that let them in. And that just goes to show there was no accountability. He didn't come to me. He didn't say anything to me. He just swiped the door, opened it, and let him in. He didn't say, hey, Mr. Young, I'm letting these kids in. These kids can't be in the hallway. Nothing. He just let them in. And it was like, hey, they're all yours. You deal with it. And that's the end of it. But I said all that to say it always goes back to accountability. And from what I saw in the schools and the time that I worked there, it's almost always the administration's fault. The administrators are the lifeblood of the school, and if the administration is garbage, then the rest of the school is garbage as well.
let's back up a moment. So,
Yes,
why did you begin as a substitute teacher?
great
You don't have to
question.
go into all of it because there's a lot of story in the book.
Uh-huh.
But I mean, how did you end up as a end up? I say end up, but I mean,
Mhm.
how'd you become a substitute teacher?
Okay, well, my background is in music, so I was playing music live at church or events or anything like that. I perform with my two brothers. My brother plays pipe organ and piano. My younger brother plays bass. I play drums and I do vocals as well. So we were just working, around town as musicians and also teaching private lessons. But in Joe Biden's America, that wasn't, it was okay money, but I felt that I could be doing a little bit better. And I
Mhm.
spoke to my mother, and she was like, you know what? You have your credentials. You could become a substitute teacher or a paraprofessional or both, which is what I ended up doing, and make you some extra money and just have some play money, just to make things a little bit easier. And I
Mhm.
sort of kicked it around. I was like, I don't know if I want to do that. I hated school all the time I was in it. I never pictured myself in that position, so I was like, yeah, I don't know if I want to do that. So then I gave it some more thought, and I ended up getting my license and everything. I got the runaround from the district offices. I had to go from one office to the next office, and everyone was sort of incompetent, and paperwork wasn't being filed. You always had to wait till Monday. It was always like a runaround and just a game. So, but even before I started working in the schools, I could already see the dysfunction that existed at the district level in the district offices.
Right.
So
Right.
I ended up by February 29th of 2024, I ended up getting cleared and everything, and I had my first day as working as a substitute teacher. The very first school I ever worked in was Oak Forest High School, which is part of the Bremen 228 school district, and it's the highest functioning school in that district. So the school tiers are Oak Forest is the best. Then it would be Tinley Park High School, which I ended up working at later. Then would be Bremen High School, and then Hillcrest, which is the school I spent the majority of my time at. Is the dead last, and it's like I think ranked 13,000 something out of 15,000 schools nationally. So it's really low on the totem pole.
So that's February of 24.
Mhm.
Through how long did you substitute? What's the timeline?
I started February 29th, 2024 was my first day, and I worked until the end of that school year. Then I started again in August or September of 2024, and I worked until May of 2025. So
Mm,
the whole ordeal was about 14 months. It
right.
seemed like a lifetime, but all the stuff that happens in this book is 14 months flat.
Wow. Goodness gracious. So you
Yes.
walk in, the first school you go to, that's a pretty good impression, right? It's a high functioning school. And
Well,
back up, when you were how old are you now? How old were you when you started as a substitute?
when I started as a substitute, I was 28 and I'm 29 and a half right now.
Okay, so 28, and so,
Mhm.
10 years prior, you're in school. What was your impression of a substitute?
Oh, well, my impression, because I always went to private schools. Well, you know what? Let me correct myself. I was
Mhm.
27. I hadn't turned 28
Okay,
yet. So I started at 27. But
right.
I went to private school. So my impression of substitutes were we were always respectful because they didn't contract out to substitutes like public schools do. Your substitute was an in-house person. You knew it could be one of the deans, it could be an English teacher, it could
Mm,
even sometimes be the principal or a parent. Even they shouldn't have done it, but at my grammar school, they had parents acting as substitutes sometimes. So,
mhm, mhm.
and God forbid if anything had happened, they would have been in a world of trouble. But they definitely did that. I have some memories. So, but substitutes, we never disrespected them. Everyone was always respectful. You gave them the exact same respect that you gave a teacher.
And I got the impression, especially from your first several encounters in the book, that, uh, how the administration treated substitutes and how the students treated substitutes kinda go hand in hand.
Oh yes.
Because
Oh
if
yes.
you and I don't really remember this when I was younger, this was a long time ago, but I mean, and I get the impression from your private school days that they kind of picked up right where the teacher left off. I mean, they had the
Yes.
curriculum, it was another day, it was just a continuation as best
Mm-hmm.
they could, but
Yep.
they had a curriculum, they had an agenda, and a lot of times you're saying you went in there and there was nothing.
You're right. You just went in there and it was business as usual. Now, a lot of the substitutes that I had in grammar school were a little bit wacky, but other than that, they would sort of screw up the curriculum. But other than that, you always gave them that respect. But I think that's powerful what you said because I really hadn't thought about that before. That the way that the administrations at these public schools view the substitutes and the way that children view them, it is paralleled. It's really
Mhm,
intertwined in a way because the administrators view the substitutes as the lowest man on the totem pole. We're completely expendable. If anything happens, if there's an incident, if anything happens, they will fire you at the drop of a hat and won't think about it, won't even think of it. So you get no respect. Just walk in the halls. There's just this condescension, and
Mhm.
all this wasn't at Hillcrest. Because even as bad as a lot of things were that I encountered at that school, I met some really good students at that school. I met some very good teachers at that school, and I met some very nice people. Other substitutes that I talk about. I talk about a lady. I call her my favorite sub. I
Mhm.
talk about her in the book. She was kind of like my work mother. She's about the same age as my mom. And she and I, we just shared such such aligned interests in history and
Mhm.
different things of that matter. So I met some great people there, but unfortunately, my bad times definitely outweighed my good times there. And the administrators just walk in the hall, you could just feel the condescension. You could feel eyes on you, them looking down their nose at you. I just never felt welcome from them. Some of them wouldn't even talk to us, just
Yeah.
wouldn't even make polite conversation.
I got the impression also that there was this element of silence, not
Yes.
just from the substitute teachers, because you said they're expendable, you replaceable, you're on contract,
Hmm.
whatever. You're,
Hmm.
no, to fire a teacher is obviously harder than
Yes.
just getting rid of a substitute.
Oh, yeah.
So the element of silence wasn't just I picked up in the book wasn't just substitute teachers, but teachers themselves. Because to me, it's like if people are in education and they want to fix education, they're gonna really listen to the people on the front lines being the teachers and obviously the subs to get their feedback. But were there other teachers that were kind of afraid to speak up about some of the issues?
Absolutely. Every single account that I give in the book where I say where a teacher is saying to me something, a little bit untoward or something a little bit off or a little bit,
Mhm.
critical, anything critical that I use in the book coming from a teacher, they always pulled me to the side or my brother's side and they would always say it in a very low, wispy tone. Like it was almost like they would whisper because there's such a fear around there of the administration. And that's the most perverse thing because if only the children had that fear of the deans, of the administrators. The children know that the administrators will go out of their way to insulate them from accountability, but the teachers feel like the administrators will come down on them. So it's completely the world, the ecosystem of the school is completely turned upside down.
Mhm.
The teachers are afraid of the administrators, the teachers are afraid of the deans, the students are not. And every single time in every account that I give in this book, minus maybe two or three, the teachers would whisper in a tone, so and so said this or so and so, they're making me change their grades. I had one teacher just tell us, and she was a 10-year teacher, had worked 30 years. She told us, she said, you and your brother, you're too talented for this. Get out. Education in America is dying. Get out.
Wow.
She said, you all there are too many fields that need young black men, intelligent black men to be the face that will give you your props, that will give you your respect and give you your roses. She said, education is not it. Get out. She said, I'm telling you, as a teacher, I've worked here 30 something odd years. I've worked at this school for 20 something years. It's not worth it. And it's getting worse. She said that I remember one thing she told me, and I put this in the book. She said that the district, the school board, would not allow the school to expel any kids. This is at Hillcrest, which is a predominantly black school. She said that the administration said that they were throwing out too many black kids. Now, that's all that went there. That's all that went to the school. Minus there was like one lonely white kid, maybe a handful of Hispanics, but it was 99% black. And the school board said, you guys are expelling too many black kids. So for DEI purposes, you may not do that anymore. If there's a problem, you throw them downstairs in ARC.
Wow. Okay, so that comes to like incentives.
Mm-hmm.
When you say there's
Absolutely.
no accountability for students and their behavior, no accountability for other teachers allowing things to happen. What does accountability for the administrators look like? What is that supposed to look like, and who are they accountable to? How does that relate to incentives?
Well, honestly, they're accountable to the school board. They're accountable to the superintendents, and they're honestly, and this sounds bad, but I'm just going to say it. They're accountable to their pocketbook. If they throw out too many kids, their ratings will go down, and they will lose funding. If they don't have enough, and I get into this in the book in the statistics section, if they
Mhm.
don't have enough special ed kids or IEPs as they call them now, they lose funding. So they're now reclassifying students who should be just just in basic education. They're reclassifying them as special ed students. Also, advanced placement students, AP students, they're reclassifying them as well, and it's all tethered to funding because a lot of the schools are that we hear a lot about urban schools not having books, not having this that. These schools, make no mistake, these schools I worked at are very well funded, very well funded. I mean, multi-million dollar complexes in the back for sports. I think they call it the field house. All these schools have a brand new state of the art field house. All these schools have every piece of technology you can imagine. They have Promethean smart boards. They have laptops. They have iPads. They have everything you could imagine. They have it. They are very well funded. They have every type of special ed program or whatever type of program you can imagine. They have a program for everything and everybody. These schools are very, very, very well funded. So it all comes down to funding, and the administrators want to make sure that they're lining their pockets and that they aren't doing anything in any way, shape, or form to jeopardize their paycheck or bring about any type of scrutiny onto the school. Because, oh, you can go ahead.
No, no, no. I was just gonna say. I mean, so you're talking about a classification of call it special ed, or you said
Hmm.
IEP, or
Uh-huh.
another classification of AP. So they receive the school receives different funding based on the number of people they have enrolled in these, and
Oh,
so
yeah.
they're gaming the system by changing the definitions and the standards and qualifications to classify somebody as special ed, and they're changing the qualifications definitions to classify somebody as AP.
100%, and that's what I found to be so interesting when I did my research for this work. Because what I found was that to send a student, just a basic student, no IEP, no special ed, to school in the state of Illinois, it costs approximately $21,000. But if you reclassify that student as special needs, that's now $41,000. So it doubles per student if they're classified into these special groups. So that's why there's such an influx in special needs students. That's why they're gaming the system, and it's unfortunate because students who actually need that help are not getting the help because the size of the classrooms are getting larger and larger instead of smaller and smaller. So the kids who really need it are feeling left behind.
Mhm.
Or in the case of the advanced placement, the kids who should be advanced and want to learn and want to put their nose to the grindstone and buckle down and study, they're now being placed in the classrooms with kids who are class clowns who cannot function at that level. And since they can't function at that level, they sort of they fall behind, and then when they fall behind, they just start acting out. So it's bad for the true special needs students, and it's bad for the truly advanced placement. And this is all due to DEI, by the way. It's funding and DEI is why they
Mhm.
do this.
I mean, you this is the heart
Hmm.
of the issue, and the administrators are gaming the system for funding. And they got all the iPads and all the tech and all the stuff
Yes.
and all the great sports and all this stuff doesn't mean you're going to increase literacy.
Exactly. And that's what's unfortunate. I think, and I get into these numbers in the books,
Mhm.
into the book. Hillcrest, its literacy rate is very, very low. I think that the math rate is hovering around 5 to 8%, and the reading rate is around about
Wha
four
wha wha
percent.
what? What'd you
So
just say?
yeah,
5 to 8%?
yes, it's very low. It's very low, extremely low. The
Now
math, they're within digits. The math and reading are all within single digits. They don't crack 10% in either. They don't. And if you go down the street 6 minutes to Tinley Park, which is a predominantly white school, they aren't 2 seconds better. They're like they might be 20%, 25%. It's still very low. So, like I said, this isn't an urban thing. This isn't a black thing. This isn't a white thing. It is pervasive. It is omnipresent, ubiquitous across the country.
there's this thing. I actually a couple years ago was having a conversation with some local education folks, and this is when I came to the realization that they don't really nobody fails. They
No,
don't actually hold them back anymore.
they don't.
I
They've been.
because to me that is I don't understand that. So when you talk about reading at grade level, it's like when you graduate, shouldn't everybody who graduates be at 100%?
I would hope so, but from the day that they enter at these schools, particularly Hillcrest and all these schools, they're given a false impression on not only education but just on meritocracy. They're told day one, they're told we don't give F's in the school, we give E's because no one in this school is capable of failing. Now, I don't care who you are in your life, whether you're the richest man in the world, the poorest man in the world, you are going to fail at something sometime. Everyone fails, and failure is good because failure, it allows you to recalibrate, assess your life right where you are, and plan ahead and do better the next time. But they're told from day one you cannot fail. And it's funny that you mentioned that because not only were the teachers telling me that they had to change grades, and if they didn't change the grades, the administrators will go above their head, behind their back, and change their grades. That actually happened to my mother when she took on a position in the school that she was working in District 205, which is the south suburbs, like Dalton, Harvey, that area in Illinois. She taught a class maybe about 3 years ago, and she was going to fail everyone who didn't turn their work, and the administration went behind her back and changed everyone's grade to like a C or something like that. And on the national level, what they've been implementing in a lot of schools is what's called the no zero policy, which means if you don't turn in your work, they're not going to give you a zero. So every kid has to get a baseline 20% in everything, whether you turn the work or not. So if I turn in all of my work and Johnny next to me turns in none of his work, Johnny is still going to get a 20% instead of a zero. So they're giving them a false impression on life, and there's absolutely no accountability. Meritocracy is dead. I
Oh,
can I can say that unequivocally. Meritocracy in America is dead. It died. Somewhere in that George Floyd 2020 era, it died and it's been gone. And I don't know if we'll get it back at this point. I really don't.
wow. You refer to, speaking of 2020, you refer to them as COVID kids.
Oh yeah.
Talk about that.
So the kids I was dealing with, because I started in 2024, so they would have been like grade schoolers at that point. So the kids I was dealing with were the epitome of the COVID kids. These were kids that were that had to have Zoom class at home, were putting buffering as their name to make it look like that their computer was acting up and they were out doing God knows what. So these are the kids that really gamed the system and were let down by their teachers, let down by their parents, let down by our medical establishment, the Dr. Fauci's of the world, the Chicago Teachers Union, who essentially extorted the Department of Education and said that they weren't going to open up the schools unless they got ventilators, and they had this, they had ventilators, air conditioning, they got this amount of funding, and an expose actually came out last fall that the teachers unions were taking that money here in Chicago and going on elaborate trips. They were in Aruba, they were in Hawaii, Egypt. Some of them went to Egypt. Anything you can imagine, anything and everything, but teaching those kids. So these were the epitome of the kids, of the COVID kids, which were let down by the teachers, the parents. Really, every single element in American bureaucracy let these kids down from top to bottom. They didn't learn how to read. There's a story at the very end of my book. It's very somber. That my brother encountered when he went back to teach. I did not go back this past school year, but my brother went back, and he encountered a boy who could not just write the most basic words like the the. If I said the cat ran across the street, he would ask my brother. He would ask him, where does the H go in the? Where does the A go in cat? Like, he had no perception of phonetic structure. He had no perception of just basic vowels, subject, predicate, verbs, anything like that. He just could not build a sentence or anything of that nature. He wasn't the only kid. So that means that not only did his parents fail him, but every single teacher that this young man has had from the day, from the day he entered his very first school, has failed him. And they just passed him along, passed him along, passed him along. And here he is, a 14-year-old child, and cannot write, literally cannot write his name. So where's this young man going to end up? You're 14 years old now. How many 14-year-olds do you know are going to buckle down and actually learn how to read? How many of them have time for that with the TikTok and God knows what else, the rap music, everything else? How many of them are going to actually take that time, buckle down, and learn how to read at that age? At that point, it's almost a losing battle. And as sad as it sounds, there are only like two or three places you can end up if you're in that situation at that age.
I mean, okay, so we're really honing in on core issues here,
Yes.
passing the kids along.
Oh yeah.
I just that just doesn't that doesn't I don't I can't relate to that.
Neither can I, unfortunately, but I can now. But I couldn't academically. I can, because we always, whether you did the work or not, you were getting a pat. You were gonna either pass or you were gonna fail miserably, and that was it. There was no in between.
Mm. And you ask an important question about the COVID kids. Call it 5, 10, 15 years from now when the COVID kids are in the workforce. not just where are they going to end up, what are they going to be doing, but what's society going to look like.
And that's the scary part because if you even look at the collegiate level now, a lot of medical schools are lowering their standards. So you're gonna have a lot of doctors out there who aren't qualified. So that's why I'm taking very good care of my body because
Oh yeah.
yeah, because God knows 15 years from now, what in the world is our medical establishment? What is our legal establishment going to look like? Now they're talking about AI doing, acting as lawyers. That's one thing, but AI can't really. I wouldn't want an AI doctor.
Mm,
Not at all. So that's what's scary. The fact that it's so pervasive. They're lowering standards on every level, from the highest collegiate level, the Harvards of the world, all the way down to the run of the mill public school down my street, just grade school. There are
yeah.
no standards, and that's what's so scary. But and it's terrifying because as a nation, where are we going to be? Where are we going to stand on the world stage? China has, I believe, they call it their 2050 agenda, where they want to become the world superpower by 2050. And if we're not educated, if we're passing along children, graduating children, as my grandmother said, I use the quote, graduating idiots is what she said. If we're graduating idiots, where does that leave us on the world stage? And it leaves us in a weakened position. And I do believe that, that's sort of a plan behind it as well.
Oh yeah. And not just weakened position, but
Yes.
John Adams, one of John Adams' famous quotes is, "Our Constitution's made for a moral and religious people.
Yes.
It is wholly inadequate for the government of any other."
Exactly.
And it's like the Constitution is supposed to protect our rights.
Hmm.
And when you have, in order to do, because the Constitution tells the government what it can and cannot do, what should tell us what we can and cannot do, it should be our natural God given rights. It should be God's law, if you will, guiding us on a moral, how we interact with
Yes.
each other. And based on the lack of discipline, meritocracy, all of lack of accountability, all of that, we're releasing into the world, into society, a generation or two oh, of people who just, the discipline, all of that is just lacking. This leads me to, and you kind of alluded to it earlier, but where are the parents?
The parents are absent. A lot of the parents use the schools as sort of like a daycare. It's like this is
Mhm.
our 8 hour break. You all take them. Don't call us, and they get upset if you call parents. There was a day and age if you call parents, they come up to the school and handle the child right there
Yeah.
in front of the classroom. In some cases, that day is that's past said. Now, if you call these parents, they actually take an attitude with you, and God forbid, in some cases, you discipline their children, or just a modicum of discipline. And this is a story that I get into the book. In the book, there was a time where I had a class over at Thornwood High School in Dalton, Illinois. And in this particular class, I had taken this class on. This was a health class, and I had this class maybe about 2 or 3 days at this point. And there was this boy, a class clown, who would sit back in the back of the classroom and just act a stone fool the entire time. I mean, he would cut up the whole time. And this day I sort of had enough. So I had my eye on him. But I hadn't said anything because I was trying to take attendance, but I definitely had my eye on him. He was getting written up. But he just decided that it was a great idea to flatulate loudly in the back of the room. I mean, pass gas so loud that it echoed, and the whole class fell out laughing. The girls were grossed out, but the boys thought it was so funny and they were laughing and whatnot. I said, "That's disgusting." I said, "If you have a problem, you come up here and tell me, and I'll excuse you, but you're not going to sit back there and do that and disrespect me like that in this classroom." And he got mad and started swearing and whatnot. And then he just said, something. How are you going to tell me? He said that's a bodily function. How are you going to tell me I can't do that in the back of the classroom? And that's a bodily function. Function. You sound stupid as f. He said you sound stupid as f. I said that'll do it. Picked up the phone, called down security. Security showed up in like 2.3 seconds, hauled him out of the classroom, and I didn't have to deal with him anymore. I thought that situation was over with. Went on with the rest of my day. Then I get summoned to the dean's office somewhere around maybe about 2 or 3 o'clock that afternoon. And the dean sits me down and she says, "I know, Mr. Young, what you've been going through, but the parent, his mother, is livid. She is livid, and she wants to have a meeting with you. She wants to have a meeting with me. She wants to have a meeting with the principal and the administrator, something else." I said, "Look, that's above my pay grade. I'm going home. I don't have time for that. I am going home." And she said, "You know what, Mr. Young, I totally get it. I understand." And this dean, I don't know who she was. I don't even know her name, but she was on it. She was handling her business that day. She said, "You know what, Mr. Young, do me a favor. Just go home, write me up an email, a short just text of verbatim what happened from top to bottom, start to finish, and I'll take that and I'll just pass it along up the chain. I said, will do. And I went home and I did that. The next day, now I told my mother about it, and she was like, "Oh, you know you're done at that school, right?" And I laughed. I said, Probably so." And sure enough, the next day I get a call from the health department over there at Thornwood High School. And he says, Mr. Young, we know we had you down for this assignment next week, and you were supposed to be filling in for Mr. whatever his name was. But he had a very specific substitute that he wanted to fill in for him from now on. So we're going to be taking the assignment from you, and your services in that regard aren't really needed. So we'll keep you posted if we need you for anything else. I said, oh yeah, really? I said, well, I just find it kind of funny and a little bit convenient. I said, are you sure this has nothing to do with that little incident that happened in the room yesterday? Oh no, Mr. Young, this had nothing to do with that incident. This had nothing to do with the boy who passed gas in your classroom. I said, oh, okay, just checking, just
Just
checking.
checking.
So what's really what ended up happening was the next week came, and my mother and I, long story short, ended up finding out that the quote unquote special sub who took the assignment was my mother's best friend. Like, they ended up giving the assignment away to my mother's best friend, who then came back and told us, "Oh, I took that assignment." So they lied to our face. They completely lied to our face. And
Wow.
and just anything to satiate the parents and to shield or insulate the kid from accountability. They rather take my assignment away, take money out of my pocket, than to deal with an angry parent who needs to discipline her child. Because if he goes out in the real world and does that, as my mother said, something's gonna happen to him. If you go out in the real world and you do
Mm,
something like that.
right. I mean, they're not preparing these kids for the real world.
Not at all. Not even a little bit. Not even a little bit.
And you would even say maybe it's on purpose, but I mean, goodness gracious, what a grand conspiracy
Yeah.
to create that issue. Uh,
Absolutely. And I had a conversation with a substitute at Hillcrest, and I talk about this as well in the book. And she told me, you know what, the kids, they have such a problem with you because they can see the light in you. And
mm.
I stopped and I said, wow, that's powerful. She said, they can see the light in you, and the light in you angers the demon in them. And I thought that was so deep and so powerful when she said that. And she then went on to talk about how this was the dumbing down of America that we were living through, and that these kids, it's not just the dumbing down, but it's just the breakdown, the systemic breakdown of morality, and all things that were once sacred and all things that were once, held in any sort of esteem or regard have now gone asunder.
Oh my goodness, that was powerful. That I remember that reading that, and I remember how powerful that was. Oh
Yeah,
my goodness. I don't even we shouldn't even continue on. That should have been the mic drop end of the interview, but I do have more questions, but that was awesome. And you are absolutely right.
yeah,
The light in you, oh, makes them uncomfortable. The
it does.
demons inside them. That is awesome.
Because when there's this caricature stereotype of how young black men are supposed to carry themselves. And a lot of the children, unfortunately, being products of their environment, they subscribe to that narrative. They subscribe to that vision, if you will. And
Mhm,
if they see someone who looks like them, figuratively, shares a skin tone with them,
mhm.
and is not too much older than them. I only have maybe 10 some of these kids. I only have about 15 years on, or less, some of them. And if they see me pronouncing all the ings on the end of my words,
Mm.
they see me holding myself to an esteem, not run around with my pants sagging down my behind or anything like that. That's an affront to them. They seriously see that as you trying to be better than them, because it challenges them, and they don't like that. It challenges their entire perception, and it makes them feel inferior. Not that I'm better than anybody, but I do hold myself to a higher standard than most. I like to say most people do in that sense, and that upsets them almost more than anything.
So, I mean, look at what you just said about that the standards.
Hmm.
You have a higher standard.
Yeah.
So, they've been taught all their lives
Hmm.
that the answer to that problem is, well, we have to lower the standard then.
Oh yeah, they feel like they have to meet the children where they are, and you see this particularly down in the basement of the school, ARC, where they put a lot of the more behavioral challenge
Mhm.
students, you'll see the deans and administrators doing what they call code switching. They'll start speaking, like Hillary Clinton when she was in
Right,
front of that black church, or Kamala Harris, and they like develop this little southern drawl that they sort of develop, and
right,
they sound like something straight off of a Louisiana plantation in the 1850s, and they're down there jive talking with the kids, and I'm like, where did this weird Creole accent come from? And it's so weird. It's like if you've seen the film Airplane when they start jive talking,
right, right,
it's just like that. And I was sitting there, I was thinking to myself, where does this come from? It's so weird. But they feel like in order to sort of, I guess, ingratiate themselves with the students and sort of get down on the level, and make
mhm.
them think that they're not as corny or as white, or whatever. They feel like they have to act like that. But I just thought it was so demeaning, and I had secondhand anger behind it, because I'm like, you kids, you all are too ignorant to even know that they're insulting your entire existence right now, but you all don't even know it. I had secondhand embarrassment and anger on their part, just sitting there listening to it. So
Wow. Wow.
yeah.
Okay, so when we're talking about parents, there's the
Mhm.
parents you brought up that look at school, I'm gonna drop my kids off, it's daycare. It's like you take them. 'Em, they're kinda mad if they get called. But what
Mhm.
about I think that there's a vast majority of parents who are under the old assumption that
Mhm.
things are like they used to be,
Oh yeah.
that I just drop my kids off and I assume that they are going to educate my children.
Yes. That does exist, and that's what's terrifying, because so many parents just don't know. You hear about the trans stuff, you hear about the boys and girls sports, but you don't hear about sex acts being performed in classrooms. You don't hear
Right.
that story every day. You don't hear about administrators who are shielding these students and validating them in a way, and telling them that it's okay to run around the school talking about you identify as a vampire and a two spirit, whatever that is. There's a student that I write about in the book who identifies as a two spirit vampire, and the school they affirm that openly, and parents don't know. They think that this is, they remember they may have gone to school in the 90s or the 80s or maybe even the early 2000s, like when I went to school, it wasn't even that bad yet. But it's not that way, and parents need to understand this, that no one is going to ride in on a white horse and save your children. You are your child's last best hope, when it comes time for accountability. And if you need to run for school board, if you need to go up there with a group, if the strength in numbers, and request to see the curriculum, you can do that federally. There is a federal law; they cannot withhold curriculum from you. You can opt out of certain things in school. So I think it comes down to parents putting down smartphones, putting, maybe don't visit the nail salon this week. Take a trip up to your child's school, demand to see the curriculum. Ask what's being taught. Ask what's going to be taught next week. What's down the pike. You do have rights, but you have to understand your rights, because they're not going to tell you your rights. They prey on, and they prey on your ignorance. They
Mm,
count on it.
mm. Talk about attendance, because
Um,
you're talking about the world of substitute teachers, not just attendance from students. We can talk about that, but
mhm.
you keep talking about 2-3 days and how teachers, how often do they need substitutes? I don't really remember substitute teachers when I was growing up. I don't remember
I
that
have very
happening very often.
I had very few, but teachers, particularly the tenure teachers, they take off when they get ready. They just do. They just take off, and that's just how it is. And the students, the truancy rate is so high. I know. I believe I get into this statistic in the book. I believe that students are only allowed to miss, like, technically you can only miss, I think, like between 18 18 school days, something like that, before you're supposed to like have to repeat or something like that, because they consider that as a large percentage of the school year. But I can tell you, chronic truancy is a true problem at the school that I worked at, particularly Hillcrest, and it's so bad to the point that right around Thanksgiving time, they actually had like a lottery system that if you showed up, now I think the Thanksgiving week is only 3 days, but if you showed up 2 out of the 3 days, they bribed you with a Dunkin' Donuts gift card. Like, you would win a prize for putting your butt in the seat at the school. So that's just how low the standards were. The standards are literally on the floor. If the standard is just come in here, just putting your behind in the seat, you get an award. That's how low the standards are.
Wow.
but the students are chronically absent, and the teachers are as well. But I don't recall a time when I was young and growing up that we had all of these substitutes. And I can remember the students coming into the room saying, "Oh, this is my third sub today. Oh, I'm so excited! This is my fourth sub today." So this is a thing. Like, you would have a string of teachers that would just call off. My very first day that I worked at Thornton High School in Harvey, Illinois, the very first day I worked there, I was there. Honestly, it wasn't even a work day. I was supposed to come in for a 15-minute meeting, my brother and I, and they had a slew of teachers call off and ended up putting my brother and I to work. A 15-minute meeting turned into a 5.5 hour work day because they were so short staffed at freshman orientation because the teachers decided to get up and protest and walk off the job. Like 10 or 15 teachers walked off, that they ended up having to put us in the classroom, or else they would have had to get up off their behinds and go up there as administrators and sit in those classrooms, and they didn't want to do that.
Wow.
Hmm.
I missed 2 days of high school. I sprained my ankle, and so there's a day I had to stay home after that. And I
Mm.
think I had to make up like a job shadowing day or something like that.
Yeah, that's how it was. My father, he would normally tell me that he only missed, I'm trying to remember, I think he said he may have missed 6 days out of his entire like undergrads,
Hmm.
between K through 12. He said he may have missed 6 days of school, rain, shine, sleet, or snow. He walked to school every day. That's
Oh,
just how it
wow.
was. You were expected to show up. But
Yeah.
now it's not like that. You have students that miss every Friday,
Oh,
and they just do it. And don't let it be any type of inclement weather. You could throw a refrigerator in school and not hit anybody in the hallway. Just throw
mhm.
throw a big microwave out in the middle of the hallway. You wouldn't hit anybody. It's a ghost town.
Wow. So we've got discipline problems. We've got financial incentive problems, changing standards, administrators gaming the system,
Hmm.
lack of accountability,
Yes,
truancy, parents not
everything.
listening to the teachers.
Yep, all of that,
Oh my
all of
goodness. What's
it.
the what's and I know in the book towards the end you've got a slew of solutions, but talk through a handful of those. And I really want to encourage people. Geno Young, Geno is Geno Young.net to get the book. It's also available on Amazon. I saw the
Hmm.
other day I looked and you were like ranking in some category of charter
Yeah.
schools or something. I saw like a number one. I'm like, oh,
Yes.
screenshot.
Yeah. So I took a screenshot of that. So we're now ranked number one in the charter schools category for the
Mhm.
top new releases. 2 days ago, I think I was like number 2 million, whatever, out of the bestsellers rank on Amazon. Now today, I've jumped up. I'm within 375,000 that percentile. So the book is scaling. There is momentum, and I'm just so thankful for all the early buyers who went out and picked up the book.
Yeah.
It is Sex, Drugs, and Illiteracy. You can get it on Amazon right now. My website is currently being built, so it'll be up within the next couple of days. But
Mhm.
for all those who want it, Amazon or Book Baby, Barnes and Nobles, really wherever books are sold, even internationally, you can
Yeah.
find it in some international bookstores. But so back to the issue of how we can solve this problem.
Mhm.
Like what I said earlier, it all boils down really to parents. Parents need to understand that you are your child's last best hope. You have to be there for your child. You have to be proactive, not reactive. Don't wait, like in Loudoun County, Virginia. Don't wait for some crazy kid to go in the bathroom and sexually assault your daughter before you stand up and do something. Ask your kids what's going on, because a lot of these kids, I encounter a lot of really intelligent kids, believe it or not, at Hillcrest and other schools I worked in. And your children know what's going on, but they may not feel comfortable coming forward. You might have to, get it out of them. Ask them, hey, what's going on? Maybe you have a laundry list of questions. You ask, hey, have you seen this? Has anyone come into your bathroom that shouldn't be there? Are you noticing administrators trying to push different agendas on you? Are you noticing that your classrooms are taking a turn, not so much in academics anymore, but now in social policy and trying to influence your mind and your way of thinking? So that's one way. But from a policy standpoint, and this is at the state level. What I would like to see is a law being passed in Illinois and other states, and this has been tried in other states, but I would like to see a truancy law that sort of tethers welfare to your child showing up to school. If your child doesn't show up to school in X amount of days, guess what? You're not getting your welfare check that week. I
Mm.
think that when you start hitting these parents in their pockets, particularly these black parents, a lot of them, which unfortunately that I encounter, they're on Section 8 or on welfare, you start hitting them in their pocketbooks, you'd be surprised how many butts start filling those seats, because there's a direct line between the kid that's out in the street at 10 o'clock in the morning knocking a grandma in the head stealing her purse and the kid that's missing this day from my math class. There's a direct parallel there. So if we start making sure that these kids end up in schools where they belong and holding these parents accountable and also locking some of these parents up. If
Mm,
your child, if you miss X amount of days or 3 weeks, guess what? You're now locked up. You're going to have some legal woes. I think that there's a myriad of ways that we can handle this issue, and this is not, this isn't novel theory. This has been tried. Believe it or not, Michigan passed a law several years ago. New York passed a law several years ago. They may not honor it anymore, or they may have stricken the law off the books, but New York did pass a law. Kentucky had this law. I believe Tennessee had this law. So this has been done before, in both red and blue states. So it can be done. And I think that would be one of the most powerful things is tethering social benefits to children showing up in schools. That would really correct the urban areas. But just from a national basis, I think that from a national perspective, parents need to take charge,
yeah,
run for school board, and
right. And
mhm.
you talk a little bit, because those are some of the problem parents, and those are some of the solutions for that. But again, I think there's a lot of parents, probably a higher percentage of parents, that just assume things are okay.
Mhm.
Actually, it's interesting. I was thinking about this while you were talking, but Illinois State Representative John Cabello, I think last
Mhm.
year, introduced a bill in Illinois House to require politicians and government employees. I think maybe it was just politicians to wear body cams. Now he's from the police department. He worked, I think, as a detective, and so he's from the world of hey, if you got to require um, the police to wear body cams, we should require state legislators to. Well, how about in the schools?
That would be amazing.
Can you imagine that?
That alone would change the entire demographic, the entire ecosystem and outlook of the way these schools operate. Because teachers, the ones that are up to nefarious business, would not feel so comfortable because they think that they have their children behind closed doors. They can say certain things. They can try to persuade them and change their minds. Administrators wouldn't be sitting back in the teachers' lounge eating pizza and popping bonbons all day. They would have to walk around and do something.
Right.
I think that would be powerful. That would change the way that children go to school in America, honestly, if there were cameras in the classrooms where parents could even tune in to a live feed of their child's classroom in real
Mhm.
time. I think that would be something great.
It's like, wait a minute, that's an AP class. Those
Hmm.
3 kids can't read.
Right. There's a problem here. This is a AP class, and you got kids running around the back of the classroom, roughhouse and knocking over stuff, throwing pencils around the classroom. That's an issue I encountered. What AP kid acts like that?
Right.
Yeah, I think
Wow.
that would be great.
I actually brought that up as kind of a funny thing because Cabela brought it up as kind of a funny thing, but man,
Mhm.
that's huge. Can you
I agree.
imagine? Yeah.
And it's funny because I remember I was in college and I had this really far left teacher. He was, looking back, I know now that he was a socialist, but he would always say, "I wish someone would put a camera up in my classroom. I would rip it down." He would often make like a point of saying that, and just you bringing that up sort of rekindled that memory. I probably haven't thought about that in 10 years, but he would always say that. But this goes to show you how this is not something new. This has been going on for some time, and it started at the collegiate level in the mid to late 1970s. That's the DEI stuff, or CRT, critical race theory, and
Mhm.
now it is metastasized and worked its way into K through 12. And that's where it's really perverse because even at the college level, if you're an adult, not maybe not so much now, back in the day, you would know if you were a conservative student, you would say, I understand this teacher is a leftist. I'm just here just to get my grade, and all the different social things I'll just rake into the garbage. Children might not have that mental capacity yet to understand, and they're very malleable in a way.
Mhm.
And so I think that's what's scary because, unlike a college student, young children are still really, really, really being molded by every single thing around them. And if you're telling them from day one that there's a gender unicorn and that gender is fluid and men can get pregnant and there is no gender is a spectrum and there is no difference between men and women, I think that once you start doing that, it opens the door to just a myriad of different perversions that are being pushed
Yeah.
onto our children.
Let's talk some of the recommendations in here. You also mentioned, homeschooling.
Yes.
Is that kind of a well, before I go there, do you think public schools can be saved? The institution.
The institution as it stands now, no, absolutely not. I think that. In order for it to be saved, is going to be number one. The Department of Education has got to go. It's got to be abolished 100%, and it has to be turned back over to the states. And from there, the states, if unfortunately, if you have a good state legislature, state government, they can then reshape it. Luckily, in America, there are more common sense of conservative states than there are blue states.
Right.
So unfortunately, there are always going to be some bad apples in there. But I do believe that it goes back to the abolition of the bureaucracy, which has destroyed. From I mean, we talk about COVID, but it goes back decades. But COVID was sort of like the pinnacle of it. That's when everything just rose to the top. But as it stands right now, no, it cannot be. It's too far gone. I believe that parents need to start advocating for their children. Like I always mentioned, running for school board and different things like that. That can sort of put a stopper on where it is so it doesn't get worse. That can freeze it where it is if we get more common sense parents into the system, being more proactive. But um, on a national basis or national scale, can it be fixed the way it stands? No, it cannot be. I think that it's just too far gone, and that too much time has passed. Too many children have been deluded. Too many children have been miseducated, and the only way we can fix this is if we just start essentially by the states and going district by district.
Mhm. So your part of your recommendation is, homeschooling. Just get your kids out.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, get them out.
You
Get them
gotta
out of
save
government
yourself.
schools. I
Yeah.
don't have any kids yet, but my children will never see the inside of a government school. After what I witnessed, there's no way. There's no
Right.
way. Even after the abolition of Department of Education, even if there's wide reforms, hopefully this book brings about reform. I say on the back of the book that I want this book to be everything for education that Uncle Tom's Cabin was for slavery. And for those who aren't familiar with Uncle Tom's Cabin, it exposed how ugly and hideous slavery was to the entire outside world. They did not know. They knew America had slavery, but they didn't know it was halfway as disgusting and putrid as it was, and not until Harry Beecher Stowe wrote that book. And other people, Abraham Lincoln, when he met with her, he said, "So you're the little lady that caused this big war, this big problem."
Oh my.
So they credit kind of her exposure into the abolitionist movement, of course, which led to the Civil War and secession and different things like that. So, but that's a separate issue. But I want this book to really rip the lid off of this, rip the scab off this festering sore that's on this nation right now. And so that's what I aim to do with this work. And I believe that parents just have to be proactive.
Mhm.
Hmm.
So I mean, and you're also talking about Illinois here, highest property taxes in the country,
Yes.
and 70, 80%, wherever it is, your area, but 70, 80% of your property tax is going to
Hmm.
that public school.
Oh yeah.
And as you said, like my daughter will never, like yours, ever
Hmm.
set foot in a public school.
Right.
We're paying for that.
Right, we are paying for that, and I'm glad you mentioned that because that sort of kindled my memory a little bit because I forgot where I was going with that.
Mhm.
Um, um, like I said, my children will never attend a public school. I don't want them in that environment at all. And homeschooling, it gives you so much freedom as a parent to understand what's going on. And I understand that a lot of parents cannot homeschool, that they feel like it's out of their league, or that they don't understand it, or they don't have the time. They have to work. They have to put be the breadwinner of the family. I understand that, but you have to understand there are homeschool co-ops. Find a good homeschool co-op, a good community system
Mhm.
in your community that will allow you to drop your kid off just like it was normal day of school, but it's controlled by common sense parents who share your values and will be an advocate for you and will be a support system for you. So you're not alone in this. There are other people who share your values, and you have to understand they want you to feel like you're alone. They want you to feel isolated. They want you to feel like it's their way or the highway. They're the only game in town. That's not the case. And a lot of these homeschools, they aren't even that expensive. So you can find a homeschool co-op. And there's some information I believe I put in the back of the book, that there are different organizations that you can look to who will help you and direct you to a local homeschool co-op that they vetted.
You mentioned earlier some of the numbers, $21,000 per
Yes.
student for a regular student, not special ed and not the AP. I don't think you gave the AP number, but still the regular 21,000. Can you
Hmm.
imagine? I mean, what kind of private school could you get into with 21,000?
You could go really almost anywhere you wanted to go with that type of money. Honestly, I remember when I was in private school. I think maybe 15 years ago, 10 years ago. I think that the tuition was maybe about $10,000. So now, just for inflation, it might be 13, $15,000, something like that. So I think I believe some different senators. I believe Senator Tim Scott has sort of proposed that as well. Sort of using like a voucher system where you can take that funding that you would use for a public school and go find a school that's more aligned with your values or that you think your child would thrive
Mhm.
in. So you can sort of, I believe they call it school choice. Yeah, school choice, and you have a voucher, you have that money, and you can shop around and go and look for a school that you feel is appropriate for your child, and not just be tethered into your community school. Because if I had to go to the school in my community where I live, and I live in a pretty nice community, but my school, my local high school would have been CVS High School, or they call it, it's now CVA, but CVS High School, which is a Chicago public school full of gangs, and it's really bad now. So I would have had no choice but to go down the street to CVS.
Mhm. Now,
So
where,
mhm,
as they always say, where is the devil? The devil's in the details.
yes.
And I've worked with a very dear friend of mine in Texas, and a number of people that she's been working with, trying to expose the dangers of the way school choice has been proposed. And
Hmm.
it sounds nice, get that voucher, especially if it was 21,000, get that voucher or whatever it is, to because they got to keep 10% for the big guy, right? You got to make sure that they're not going to give you the full 21,000. But
Oh no,
anyways,
no.
when you get that and then you give it to a homeschool or a private school or a whatever, or a Christian school or something, what they're going to do is, the devil's in the details. Wherever you spend that,
Hmm.
the state is going to require them to follow certain curriculum
Yes,
to qualify to receive that.
that's right.
That's how. So the way universal school choice, remember universal basic income,
Hmm.
universal health
Yeah,
care. Now it's universal school choice.
get these
That's where
terms.
the devil is. You got to watch out for those details. There's a lot
Absolutely.
of states falling for this ruse,
Hmm.
because that to me is like a failed system is where people are trying to escape. But that failed system is going to be the largest takeover of all education options ever. And in
Hmm.
order for you to be allowed to use that money somewhere, they have to follow that curriculum. And I know that there are homeschool organizations and networks, Classical Conversations, for example, they refuse any of the vouchers
Hmm.
because they are not going to be beholden to the government for their curriculum, for their qualifications, or anything like that. So
Yes.
I agree with the idea of the marketplace and competing
Mhm.
and stuff
But you know it's gonna be abused terribly.
completely.
Great point. Great point to bring that up.
Yeah.
Definitely.
So I mean, I agree with the principle of the school choice
Yeah,
and the
me
voucher,
too.
and so it could
Yeah,
be different ways, but I just think the idea of public education in and of itself
yeah.
sounds like a great social contract idea, but I think it's
Mhm.
just completely failed.
Yeah, it is, and that's why I just go back to the point that I don't see in my estimation. Now I could be wrong, and I hope that I am. I don't see a good solution or a good end game to public education as it stands right now, as a system, as a
Right.
bureaucracy. I don't see that. So if you are a parent and you can get your kids out, I know every parent can. I'm not going to be one of these people. I know there are homeschool people that just shout, "Get your kids out, get your kids out, get your kids out," but they don't understand that a lot of people don't have that option.
Yeah.
So I'm not one of those people. But what I'm saying is,
Mhm.
if you can, or if you think you can, like if you just think you can make the space for it,
Mhm.
get your children out.
Or you don't have kids, and
Hmm.
if someone's in college and you're like hearing this, plan ahead where
Yes.
you because if someone has the if somebody needs to pull their kids out now, they're in a situation. They're
Right.
not, I don't want to say stuck, but they're like, oh man, there's so hard choices got to be.
It's hard.
If you're in college now, plan ahead so you don't
Yeah.
get yourself in that position.
Right. I
Now,
agree.
now to back up, I've got family and teachers,
Hmm.
and it's a noble profession. And the reasons why people become teachers is noble and it's wonderful. And I'm not knocking it. So it's when I
Hmm.
say public education is dead, I'm not knocking everybody who's doing it.
Right. Me either.
But there are like talk about some of the teachers that you ran into, especially the ones I'd love to hear some conversations of ones that had been in it for a while and
Hmm.
they had seen the changes in the culture and they're probably getting ready to retire a little bit and like,
They are.
oh,
One of them is, like I mentioned earlier, one of the teachers, which was a math teacher. She was the one that told my brother and I, just get out.
mhm,
I've been in this. She said, I've been in this 25 years, 30 years, going on 30 years, whatever.
mhm,
I don't see it improving. I see it getting worse. And with new administrators coming in, a new principal coming in and whatnot, a new assistant principal taking over, a new superintendent being failing forward. The principal of this school is now failing forward to the superintendent over the entire district. I see it getting worse. She said, just get out.
Mm.
So that was one teacher, and then I had another teacher that I spoke to, and she would often come in and she would be heating up her lunch, and she would often talk about how the administrators were pressuring her to change the grades and how the kids had no respect for her. They come into the classroom with the attitude. They come in putting their heads down, throwing stuff around, and she would just complain. And then this is funny. Now this wasn't even a conversation, but I remember I was standing outside of my doorway one day in between classes, and there was a man standing there. There was a teacher. He was standing right across the hall from me, and he didn't say anything. He didn't say one word. He just looked at me, and I looked at him, and like our eyes locked. And just in that moment, like it was like I understood what he was saying, and he understood what I was saying. You could just feel just the sadness. I laugh about it now, but it's actually really bad. It's like you could just see just the sadness and the fatigue and the anger and the frustration and just the brokenness in this man just by just looking in his eyes. It was like just it was crazy. But I had a lot of I had some good teachers that I was spoke to, but unfortunately I had a lot of interactions with a lot of bad teachers, and there was one in particular at a school that I worked at, Tinley Park, and she told me, and I get into this in the book, and I believe we talked about this before. She told me, you have to earn the kids' respect. And I said, "Excuse me?" She said, "You have to earn their respect." She said, "You come in with the attitude and you come in trying to boss them around and tell them what they're doing wrong and this, that, and the other thing, they're not gonna receive you. So you have to sort of get down on their level and you have to earn their respect." And I said, "Well, excuse me, but from where I come from, children don't control anything.
Mm.
I don't have to earn a child's respect. This child is half my age. Like at the time 20 28. These children are 14, 15. I'm not earning their respect. They need to be earning my respect. They need to be not earning my respect, giving me respect. Just giving me respect because of who I am and the position that I'm in and the authority I have as the acting teacher in the classroom." And she just went on and on, and I ended up just all the notes that I had written to the dean for her class, I just ended up tearing them up because I knew they weren't going to go anywhere. And I say that to say the previous week I was in her classroom and I had a lot of issues, and I wrote up a bunch of kids, and I ended up getting called down to HR at Tinley Park High School because, and the HR person when I got down there, she said, "You're rubbing too many people the wrong way in the dean's office." I said, "What do you mean?" She said, "You're creating unnecessary tension in the classrooms." And again, I'm like, "What are you talking about?" She said, "You're you're writing up too many kids.
Ooh.
You're you're making it look like the classroom is out of control." I said, "That's not a look. The classroom is out of control. And I'm writing up the students because I don't know, the discipline office is supposed to handle discipline." Now,
Right.
isn't that a novel concept? So then she started going around in a circle about how times are different and we don't admonish the children like we used to. When I was in school, she said 30 years ago it was this, this was a standard. When you were in school 10 years ago, that was the standard, but now things are different, and we try to meet the children where they are and give the children a little bit of slack, and we try to mold them because they're still upcoming adults, and we're trying to mold them, right? I mean, she was using all these leftist terms and sappy platitudes, and it was just so gross. And I could barely hide my the look on my face, my disgust. I was just looking at it. You could fry an egg on my forehead. I was just that angry. Like I could feel just heat just coming out of my collar. I was just that upset. And then she closed with, "Well, I hope to see you on Monday." I said, "I'll see you Monday," and I walked out. And then Monday is when I came there and I spoke to the teacher that told me that I needed to earn the kids' respect. And that's when I told her, what, just tear up those discipline reports because the dean's office isn't going to do anything. And I was really hurt by that because this was one of the only African American people in Tinley Park High School, and I thought that I could relate to her, and she was always kind to me, but she looked out for me and
Wow.
everything. But she, in that moment, I realized that she was just as bad as everybody else at that school, and that she was one of them. She was a good little company woman, and she was not gonna get a toe out of line, and she was gonna toe the line and make sure that she was there to collect her check.
Oh my goodness. That's
Yep,
sad.
it's really sad.
Wow.
It's terrible.
Gen- Gino, any points we missed today? Because we covered a lot of ground. I really want to encourage people to go to genoyoung.net, GENO Young.net, to check out the new website and to get your book. Anything we missed?
Um, Not that I could think of. Just for those who who might be looking for the book, until the website is up, you also want to go to Amazon and Book
Mhm.
Baby. If there's just one thing I could just say, just to the parents in closing, just understand that this isn't a Chicago thing. This isn't a black thing. This isn't a white thing. This is pervasive. It's ubiquitous. It is everywhere. Your child's school is but one principal change, one administration change, or one school board election away from destruction. You are not insulated where you are, wherever you are. I don't care if you're in a small town. I don't care if you're in a major city. This is everywhere. They're coming for your kids. And the only thing you can do about it, if your children are in these public schools, is prepare yourself. Prepare yourself, study to show yourself approved, know your rights, know that you can
Mm,
advocate for your children. You can go up there. There is a federal law in the books. They have to show you curriculum. If anyone gives you a hard time, report it. Know there's safety in numbers. Go up there. If it's just moms, go find. There are men that are strong men that will go up there with you. Don't let these people intimidate you, because they get off on that. Understand, no one is riding in on a white horse to save your children. You are your child's last hope, and if you don't do it, then I'm terrified for your children, and I really do fear for the state of America.
Because I would say, your book, Sex, Drugs, and Illiteracy, The Death of Education in America, I would offer to say that it's directly linked to the death of America.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. And it's been a slow death over decades, but I can say since COVID, this death had it's hit the gas. It really has, in
Wow.
a myriad of ways, but it really has, and it's
Gino,
scary.
yeah, Gino, thank you so much for taking the time today. GenoYoung.net.
Thank you so much. God bless.
Sponsored by Hidden History Laboratories, uncovering hidden truths that shaped nations. Learn more at hiddenhistorylabs.com.